Because I started 18 years ago, when I started my PhD with Professor Brehm, there was this EU project, and he said, okay, Barbara, Peter Dodge is doing the mtDNA, the maternal lines, we do the Y-chromosome, the stallion lines, and yeah, with some interruptions, I'm still focusing on this topic with interruptions, and when a new technique comes out that gives us the chance to reveal new insights on the Y chromosome, I just come up and now I maybe show you some first data on this. So, all horse breeds have their famous influential stallion lines, this we know. Here we see the famous, the founders of the English thoroughbreds, which are just 3 of them, but we have them in many other breeds, like in the Njal, the single founder of the Norwegian fjord horse, or whatever. So in most modern breeds we have only a limited number of male lineages preserved today. And what we can infer from this is that this particular founder stallions contributed excessively to the today's breeds. And what we also know from history, that these founders sometimes derive from distant regions. I show here, I have no pointer, sorry. We have a strong influence in European horses from the Spanish stallions. Then we have the Arabian influence, Arabian and Turkoman horses, and not in the Lipizzan, but in other breeds, in the sport horse breeds, we have a strong influence, a wave of the thoroughbred stallions. When we look now on the Lipizzan stallion lines, we have 6 classical lines preserved. You know them maybe better than I know. These are the founders, and they come from different regions and different studs. And all around in the 18th century, these founders were born. This is now a graph from my PhD thesis still. Here we reconstructed the paternal genealogies of the stallions I had as samples in 2000. And what we see here is their relationship back to the ancestor Fabricenia. And what we see here in colors is that they really were shifted also between the studs. And we see here the relationship. But what we can see on this tree is now that they all go back to one stallion, and we want now a pedigree independent characterization of the stallion lines with genetic markers. Then we can maybe learn about the origin of the founders and where they come from and how they were related. Yeah, this was our setup. And how can we do this? So we can look on the genome. And we heard today from Marcus about the genome. It's huge. Here we see here all the chromosomes from the horse. It has 32 chromosome pairs. It is about 3 gigabases of DNA letters. And in circle here, you have a small piece here. This is only in the males, and this is the Y chromosome. It's just a tiny piece of the genome. The male sex chromosome. And this is so special for our analysis because it is inherited differently from the rest of the genome. If you look now on the lower, here we see a foal, and in the big 2 chromosomes we see that the foal is a mixture of its parents, from the mother and the father. Half from the mother and half from the father. But the tiny black chromosome is here. This comes directly from the father if it's a son. So the Y chromosome goes directly from the father to the son. So it matches perfectly the paternal line. On the other side, you see the circle. This is the mitochondrial DNA. This is inherited in the maternal line, and this matches the maternal lineage. I have to bring in one more thing. This is not that static as drawn here, because evolution is going on, so there might happen some changes when in the germline. Here is a star, so we accumulate mutations, and this is what we need to distinguish the male lineages. This is not different from my... Sorry. I sent the presentation as a MEC format, so now it does matter. Maybe it's... no. Okay, when we are now when we now want to look on these stallion lines, we look which variants do we find on the Y chromosome in a population. And now I miss my graph, because it should be that we have some lines and they have different variants and we can connect them and they coalesce once in a common ancestor. And I missed now this. So when we analyze now the Y chromosome, we look which variants do we find in a breed and we define a haplotype, yeah? And then we look how are these Y chromosomal haplotypes related. We have here now, this is usually drawn in a network. I want to introduce this because we need it for my further assumptions. And haplotype is a variant on the Y chromosome, and this is now drawn as a circle. And the relation between the haplotypes is the length between the circles, and the size of the circles is the frequency of the observed haplotype. Okay, what can we do with these Y chromosomal markers? So we can search for pedigree-independent male genealogies. We can look on the origin of the stallion lines, we can look on the distribution of the stallion lines in the breed, in a stud or in other breeds. If we know the haplotypes of the stallion lines, we can monitor gene flow between breeds, or we can look on the effective breeding males, and we can do a dating, because we want to look how many haplotypes do we find, how is their relation, how distantly are they related, and then we can calculate back to the ancestor. So in horses now this is very special. If we look now on the maternal side, what we already heard today from Peter Dodge, we find lots of maternal haplotypes. And if we calculate back to the ancestor, it is about 170,000 years back. But when we look on the paternal side, and this was the problem why it took us so long to get the first data, we find almost nothing. The horse Y chromosome, if we sequence on it, it was always the same. So we didn't find any difference between the line. In 2013, when I grabbed up the project again, we started to sequence larger parts. We were able to find 6 haplotypes, the first 6, whereas you see here in purple, green, and in violet, these are Northern European haplotypes, so they were not found in Europe, but the real European horses, the warm-blooded horses, they are all in the Turkish, in the yellow, and in the red dot. These were the 3 haplotypes that we found, the only one. But we were very lucky because we had pedigree information, and we could see that this red haplotype happened in the English thoroughbred. So we have one haplotype, which is the red haplotype, which is indicative for the stallion whalebone. It happened in whalebone, and all horses that carry haplotype 3 in the modern horse breeds go back on the paternal side to whalebone. And if we now look, where do we find whalebone in horses? We see that's almost fixed in the English thoroughbred. So they all go back to whalebone on the paternal side. It's very high in the quarter horse, in the American breeds, but also in the dressage jumping horses. In the Lipizzan horse, you see here, we find the yellow and the Turkish 2 haplotypes, the white distributed. But this is not a good resolution, so we went on from this point now. This is published, you can look it up. But now we have a following work, and I will show you some preliminary data on this. So how can we go deeper into the yellow and in the Turkish one? This is what we are interested in. So we tried a lot. Now with the next generation sequencing technology, you heard a lot about this on the genome of Twilight, but Twilight was a mare, so she has no Y chromosome. We have no reference where we compare our reads to, so we did lots of work in building us our own reference for the Y chromosome. And this is what we have now. We have a large region that we comparatively can screen for the Y chromosome. And this we started then in 2014 for this comparative screen. And what we get is, we start from the beginning, we compare the modern horses, you see right up here, come very close together, and far away is the Przewalski horse. This is the first what we saw. We were very happy. That mirrors what we expect. And in the modern horse, we find one branch, the Mongolian horse, an Asian horse that's far away, but all the others come together. And now let's zoom in, because we need this feedback to interpret our Y-chromosome data. So this is now the modern horses we were looking at. I guide you a little bit through, but I have no pointer. May I go like this? So we have, again, here we come from the Przewalski horse, and we see up the Shetland ponies, the Norwegian fjord, and the Icelandic horses. They are really different from the rest. And what we have now here is this big bubble, what was before the Turkish one, the yellow ones, and here down we have the whalebone, the big red, yeah? And then we take the breed information, pedigree information, and what we infer now, and we will hopefully have this published in a couple of months, that we have here the Arabians, yeah? And here, this is all from the English thoroughbred, yeah? We have here two different clades that are Arabian horses, Soraya, and on the green one we find in draft horses and British ponies. This is now the backbone we have from our data that we found when we sequenced lots of horses. So, what comes next? Yeah, now we zoom in into this clade here where we see the Iberian horses and the English thoroughbreds. And we have here the Spanish clade and here the English thoroughbred clades where we find all three founders of the English thoroughbred. And then we start sequencing and comparing our Lipizzans. Unfortunately, we have just two sequenced Lipizzans yet. So we sequenced Conversano Cesana, you know him already. And the next one was Favori Raluca. Where can we find Favori Cesana? We find Favori Cesana in the Spanish clade. And we find Favori Raluca over here. That's the blue dot. And to compare you, this is the T clade. What we interpret is coming from the Turkoman horse. So it is a stallion line that can be placed close to the Turkoman horse, and old to the center here came from Bali Turk. So there is a close relationship between the Raluca to the Turkoman horse and the Conversano to the Spanish lineages. But it's all within this big Oriental clade. What I also want to tell you is that we date this. How old is this clade? It is just 1,000 years old. So this Oriental clade, where all the Arabians and the Turkoman and the Spanish are in, it's just 1,000 years old. So the Y chromosome tells us only a very recent story of the horse, yeah? So unfortunately we had just two sequenced, but we have the SNPs from the others, so we know, and we started typing the other lines, yeah? And now I show you some first data where we place the other lines, yeah? So we start with the Favori, which was the blue one, and together with the Favori go the Neapolitano. So we took 6 Favoris and 6 Neapolitano, and they cover the main lineages, so not from the same father also, and we try to cover the whole Favori and Neapolitano lineage. So they go together. Then Maestoso and Pluto, they go directly on the Bali-Turk dot together, the orange one. The Siglavi goes up here, and Siglavi goes into the real Arabian lineage. So we find this haplotype also in other Arabian imports, like Ilderim or other Arabians. So Siglavi goes up there, and the Conversanos, they all go in this Spanish dot. Then I also typed Incitato, which goes together with the Maestoso and Pluto, and one Tulipan. So this is really preliminary because we have not sequenced them yet. So what we now do is we have to sequence these lines also, that we find private haplotypes. And I show you some data on another breed and why I think that is very confident that we find it, yeah? But what I don't want to hold back to you is we also find pedigree errors. So what we see now, we find 2 Favoris that go into the Siglavi clade. There must be some false paternal ancestry. So we find two maestosos, they also go into the Siglavik clade. And in the Siglavik we find one on the blue dot and one on the orange dot. But what we can say is, where did this false paternity happen? Because if these two horses are wrong, we know that the error must have happened past before. Yeah, we can tell where there was an error. But we will see it. Unfortunately or luckily, we'll see it. Okay, so now we are in progress in sequencing other horses from the other lineages, so we can infer private haplotypes for all the lineages and also maybe for the subbranches. And we will also include the Incitato, Tulipan, Kladrup lines and other Spanish lines, so we can really compare and make the network more dense and more interpretable. Why I think it's so confident, I just show you some data on another breed. This we did together with Marcus and Stefan Rieder on the Franche-Montagne, because here we had lots of sequenced horses. We had 21 stallions in total, and in the Franche-Montagne they are similar to the Lipizzan, the stallion lines. So we have 4 lines covered here with our samples, and what we see now is that the Y line, the N line, the C line and the L line, they all form together in one haplogroup. Yeah? And this is all within this TU clade, in the thoroughbred clade. So the Franche-Montagne, they all go in this very, very short derived thoroughbred clade, which also fits to the history of the breed. What we see now is that the Y line is not just one haplotype. What happened? There might have happened some mutation that led to the new haplotype. So, and this we can see from the pedigree. So here we have reconstructed the pedigree of Vaillant and his descendants. On the right there are the horses we had sequenced. And beside you see the haplotype they have. So the most of them have the TU haplotype. So we infer that Vaillant, which was born in 1891, had the TU. And then happened one mutation leading to TUF1 and the next one leading to TUF2. And if we sequence lots of Lipizzans, we will also be able to determine the subbranches. You see this here, that you see TU, TUF1, TUF2. Okay, so I come to the end and sum shortly up that I think that the Y-chromosomal markers, we are now at the state that they can provide a useful tool for the genetic characterization of the stallion lines. They can describe the paternal population structures. Our network now serves as a backbone to discriminate modern clade, so we can now do typing and say, okay, it's in the Arabian, the Spanish or the thoroughbred clade. And we offer this also at the Institute now as a service, if somebody's interested to look in maybe unknown history of paternal lines where we can group them roughly. But we are now really in progress to do more sequencing. We can also do it now targeted for the Y chromosome to really infer the haplotype of the respective horses. So far we have Conversano and Favori, but and Siglavik groups to the other Arabians. Neapolitano and Favori are so far together, Maestoso and Pluto are together, and Conversano is Lipizzan specific in a Spanish clade. So I thank you for the attention, and on my colleagues from the Institute who helped me to do the work, and the collaborators providing us with data so we can compare the horses. And thank you for the invitation.